Hello. Um, Hi. My name is Nathan Wilson, and this is Storytime. This is a story about how I became an exchange student in New Zealand. When I was in high school, my senior year of high school, I was in a small town in Humphrey, Arkansas, and I was just bored. I didn't have anything to do. There was no opportunities. I couldn't go anywhere. I had a car. I was driving around, but I couldn't. There wasn't really much for me to do in that small town, and I was just bored. When I was younger, my parents took me to Europe and Mexico, and I was just blown away by the rest of the world. And I love just got a itch to travel, and I said, "Mom, Dad, I want to go somewhere. I gotta get out of this. I feel like I'm in a rut at home." And so I talked to my parents and I said, I want to be an exchange student. I want to go somewhere and live somewhere else. I can't live here anymore. And we talked to them and they said, "Oh, we're going to send you to Russia." Um, and I said, "I don't care. Just send me anywhere. Send me anywhere. Ethiopia, Russia, China, wherever. Just send me somewhere." And we talked to an exchange student program, and they said, "Okay, we have some spots open, and it's kind of costly." And my parents looked at it and they said, "Okay, you can go on this exchange program, but you have to pay half. You have to work and make your own money and to pay half, and we'll pay the other half." And I remember we put like a piece of paper on the fridge with how much it cost, and then when I paid them money, it goes lower and lower until I pay my half. And then, and to make sure it would work, we also talked with my high school principal, and he said they looked at all the credits I had, and he said, "Well, okay, you've actually got all your credits that you need, or you will have after the my first semester. I needed the only credits I would be taking in my second semester of my senior year would have been English two, and then world history." He said, "Well, we'll find some kind of self study so you can take both semesters of the English class at the same time. And um, for the world history, we'll just count you going to New Zealand, just take a history class there, and we'll count it towards our high school's credits, and you'll graduate from high school." So my exchange program was from January till June, so 6 months. And eventually we got a call that said, "Hey, would you like to go to New Zealand? We found a host family there." I said, "New Zealand? Yeah, that's great. They speak English there. So I bet I'll fit in well. That's even better than Russian, which I don't know Russian." So that's where we planned to. And I had a job throwing newspapers and with bagging groceries and bringing the groceries out to people's cars at a local supermarket. All right. Yeah, I was 17 at the time, so I was just trying to work all I can, but it's hard to make money when you're 17. And okay, and then so that's why I talked with my principal. It took me a long time. It was pretty hard to save up money. Everybody else was just going to school, doing their normal thing, but I would go to class from 8 to 9, and then from 9 to 10, I would self study on a project I wrote about the Mars rovers. I did a long essay about the Mars rovers, and it's pretty exciting back then. It's still exciting now. And yeah, eventually we got to go. So in January of 1999, I left uh, first there was a culture camp in Sydney, Australia, where I met. There were people from all over the world, and I got to meet a lot of people. And I seemed to spend the most time with Brazilians, and I learned a little bit of Portuguese in the culture camp in Sydney, Australia. And I loved meeting them and playing soccer with them, even though I'd never played before um, at all. And so we kind of talk in English and broken Portuguese. I didn't know Portuguese or Spanish at the time, but they taught me a few words I can't say here. Um, but anyway, I thought they were neat people, and I also met some. There was only one other American and a Canadian, and those two were girls, and they stuck together, and they were friends, and I liked them. They seemed interesting people. Got to know both of them in New Zealand because they were going to New Zealand. Some of the people in the culture camp were going to uh, Australia, and some were going to New Zealand, but everybody met had the same culture camp. And so another thing interesting about that culture camp that really opened up my mind is there was a Aboriginal person that was, and he said, "Who here is from America?" Um, and I raised my hand, and the other American did too. And then all the people from South America, they raised their hand. He said, "Oh, you're not from America." And they said, "Yes, we are. We're from South America." And that I never heard that worldview before about the America not only being the United States of America, but the America as a continent, North and South America. And so I felt that worldview very uniting and great. Um, but I haven't even got to New Zealand yet. So finished the culture camp, great experience. See the Sydney Opera House, took pictures. And anyway, hopefully I can add the pictures in somewhere here. Um, I'll add them in later. Uh, Probably. Okay, later being a relative time. So maybe 5, 10 years later. So anyway, so what the next place we went to New Zealand, I got to the airport in Auckland, or was it Wellington? I'm not sure. Um, and then my home was to be in Fielding, New Zealand, which is on the North Island. And there were some people going to the South Island, and I went with the few other exchange students that were going to the North Island, and we all got picked up at the airport. And I got picked up in a Mercedes, and it had sheepskin on the seats. And when I was walking to the car, I put my bags in, and I started to go into the driver's seat. And I was like, "Oh, I'm on the wrong side of the car." And then, because my instinct is to go to the passenger seat, but what would be the passenger seat in America is the driver's seat in in New Zealand, because they have the steering wheel on the opposite side of the car and drive in the left lane instead of the right lane, which is takes some getting used to, but it's kind of interesting. Um, and then we had a lot of experiences, but that first night I started talking to my host parents, and they spoke English, but they spoke British English, and they had an accent, and we were also very um, not completely comfortable with each other yet, and we just met them. Um, I think I had wrote them a letter, and they wrote me a letter, and and I couldn't really understand them. They had me some tea, and I said, "How do you like your tea?" I've never had tea before. Um, and then that just opened up a world of experiences to me. So I couldn't understand them the first night, but then I said, "Oh my gosh, what have I gotten into?" I was so scared. But the next day, uh, I talked to him more and more, and it was easier and easier to understand. Um, I think the biggest communication problem that I had, we were all eating fish and chips around the table, um, fried fish and French fries. Um, the fish was a seafood. I'm used to catfish in Arkansas, but the seafood is much better. And oh, one thing they tell you, culture camp, um, there are many differences between countries, between peoples, and it's better to you're going to look at some things and think, "Wow, this is so much better," and you're going to look at some things and you say, "Ooh, why do they do that? That's so much. I don't like that at all." But it's better to keep an open mind and to keep thinking it's not better, it's not worse, it's just different. And the more times that you can do that, you'll keep a more even emotion because our body's natural um, inclination is to say, "Wow, this is better" at the beginning. "Oh, yeah, it's so great, it's so great. I'm so happy, yay, yay, yay." And then and then you get to this high and then you'll get a low because you'll say, "Oh, but they don't have something I'm missing in my country. They don't have peanut butter M&Ms." And that's I love peanut butter M&Ms, especially high school. I ate so many bags of peanut butter M&Ms. My grandmother bought big bags of peanut butter M&Ms, and I would eat them so often. When I got to New Zealand, there were no peanut butter M&Ms, and my grandmother wasn't there, and my family wasn't there. And it made me get sad and missing home. Uh, but later, my grandmother did send me peanut butter M&Ms. She sent me several bags of peanut butter M&Ms, and it was so exciting. Uh, when I went to New Zealand myself, I brought some in my luggage. Um, after after the exchange experience, I came back, but then the people who were checking my luggage at customs, they didn't allow the peanut butter M&Ms in. So I'm not really sure why. It was okay to have them by mail, but it wasn't okay to have them um, through the luggage. But anyway, so that's the main thing. When you're coming into an exchange experience, you say, "This is not better, this is not worse, this is just different." It'll keep you in more even keel. Um, I'll tell other stories about when I was in China. This person, he got too excited and then too far down, started lighting curtains on fire and went crazy. But that's a story for a different day. This story about New Zealand, um, let's see. Um, yeah, I met many other friends there. Met a whole lot of friends. The first instinct there is to become friends with the other exchange students because they're not from there, you're not from there, so you can kind of bond together. There was a large group of Chinese exchange students, maybe 10 or 12 of them, and they stuck together just themselves, only speaking Chinese and only with themselves. Um, I said, why are they in New Zealand if they're only speaking to each other and not speaking English? I have no idea. But I hung out with a lot of different groups. So there was Germans and Americans and a lot of other Swiss, Switzerland, Swedish girl, a lot of different nationalities, but we only had just a few of each country at the school. So we would kind of hang out in a group, but I would also meet a lot of local people separate from that group. Um, and I would make an effort to meet local people. Local people, if they're very popular, they might not be open to a new exchange student unless the exchange student becomes very popular, which I was not very popular at first because I was very shy and reserved and don't speak very much out. But they had a idea about I was in a class um, and there was a radio program. And this radio program, you could at lunchtime you put on music, do like a talk show, do whatever you want to on the radio for an hour, and it comes out. The school plays the radio. It only goes to the school. So some people they played it and they had fun, but a lot of people it wasn't very popular. But I said, "Wow, I can control what everybody sees and hears. That's very exciting to me." So yeah, sign me up. Yeah, I want to do it. I want to do it. Uh, and so I signed up for it, and they let me. And instead of playing all the New Zealand music, I had my own American music that I brought with me. So I played a lot of music that I liked from America. And all of a sudden, people were like, "What? What is this that we're hearing?" Because they'd never heard a lot of those songs. And it just got really, really popular that lunchtime. And there were like people surrounding the radio station and be like, "Whoa, yeah, that's so great. That was so," and and I didn't really know how to work all the equipment. But one of my friends that they got caught up in it also because they were like, "This is so cool. Let me let me be there with you." I let them into the radio station. There was a guy and a girl, and we let them in. I let them in, and they helped, and it was just amazing. We did that like 3 or 4 more times because it got so popular, but also at the same time it got a little crazy, which was fun. I like things to get a little out of hand every once in a while. Uh, okay. So yeah, there's some local friends that I met there, and then they invited me to some parties, and it was kind of cute because they were learning to drive, and I've been driving. In Arkansas, we you have to drive to go anywhere. So I'd been driving. I drove bulldozers, tractors, and then later cars, and and then cars going everywhere. There's a lot to drive in Arkansas. New Zealand, you can drive from the top of the North Island to the bottom of the North Island, maybe I think it's 4 hours. And that's pretty windy roads through kind of mountains. You go through the interior of the country. You can circumnavigate it. It takes a little longer, but not much longer. And like I said, I had this exchange student experience, and then I went back when I was in college. And when I went back in college, I said, "I'm going to drive this time." So I rented a car in Auckland, and I drove the whole the whole island in a early morning. Let's see. All right. Another thing, an opportunity I had in New Zealand that I didn't have in Arkansas was boxing and a boxing club. And I found that was really exciting. I got to, they never, I never got up to the level where I could box other people. And I never really wanted to get to that level. Um, but I could practice with the speed bag and the punching bags and all that. And I thought that was really great. And we just do all the motions, and do some training. And I think that was fantastic. Another thing was rugby. I'd never seen or experienced rugby, but rugby is very popular in New Zealand. the rugby matches are very great. And I tried out for the rugby team, and I was on the third tier. And so like in the tryouts, they see how good you are, and if you're really good, they put you on the first tier, the second tier, and then the third tier. But I was on the bench of the third tier, so not quite. I didn't actually get to play in the rugby games. I just watched them. Basically, I did the practice, but not. I couldn't play in the games. Um, and so, but I love rugby, and I took my experience in high school with rugby, and when I was in college, I met somebody else, and they were trying to start a rugby team. I said, "What? You're trying to start a rugby team at Henderson State University in Arkadelphia? Let's do this!" Uh, and I and I found out one of the teachers, he had been a coach for rugby in California somewhere. And then I talked to the teachers, and we got together a group. I think we got about 7 guys for our first game for a group of sevens. Um, so great. So, I mean, so many experiences built on this exchange student experience. And it was so wonderful. And it literally changed my life. Um, and I'm going to wrap this up here. And being an exchange student, it changed my life, and it opened up doors that I never thought were possible. It expanded my dreams. When I came back from being an exchange student, oh, this is another thing I need to tell about. I'm coming home. Um, when I came back from being an exchange student, I didn't make any major changes to my appearance. My hair was still really long and over my eyes. It's not anymore. Uh, but I looked the same to other people, but on the inside, it was greatly different. But everybody was treating me like I was the same. And I was like, I'm not the same. And one night, I was getting so frustrated by this inner conflict that I shaved off all my hair. And then people could clearly see that I've changed and I've made a big difference in my life. Um, and in my high school, I was told I got very popular when I wasn't there. Um, but luckily, my parents attended my graduation. While I was in New Zealand, my parents in Arkansas attended my graduation in Arkansas and got my diploma. So when I came back, I was going to college next. But transitioning back to my hometown, I had changed so much, but my hometown had changed so little. And that was kind of hard for me. I was eating healthier, I'd lost weight, and I came back to my hometown, and I made some changes in my hometown, but not very much. But I was glad to get off to college. Um, and let me see, another thing, my dreams of what was possible changed because if I can be an exchange student, I can do anything. And so I had completed my goal of being an exchange student. I'd saved up so much money, and then I did it, and then now I'm back from it. And so what I did um, after coming back from being an exchange student, I changed my goals. I said I don't want to have a goal and then just finish it and be empty again. I want to reach a much higher goal. And now my goal is to go to Europa. It's a moon of Jupiter's. Uh, it's an icy planet, and the whole outside of the planet is covered in ice, and inside there's heat and potentially there could be life because the friction and the heat and the ice is protective, but it also has gaps where it can. Uh, it's very possible that there's life on Europa. So I want to go there and I want to explore that. My goal to do that is by the time I retire. Uh, but I want to dream big, and I hope you dream big too. All right, thank you. Bye. Oh, subscribe if you haven't. Also, like the video if you made it to the end.